went for improved firebox. Interesting. I would have gone for the candle. Dusk went for the candle. Heart.
All right.
Firebox.
We have gameplay now. It's amazing.
Okay. So we have a split on the opening artifact. I think those are pretty big, impactful artifacts.
Yeah, I would lean towards the exploding candle. Same thing you said. It really covers a lot of your issues, and also when you start thinking about like what did having to fight divinity and a lot of shard enhanced enemies add to the game, I think sweeping effects are more important now than ever, and that was already very prominent in the game. Exploding candle really is like a way to dip into that at really low cost. So I'm surprised to see players pass on it.
Endless on a tomb or anything with burnout really, or reform. They have a reform in Wicked Blaze. I think it's interesting. I'm trying to think of what the improved firebox would enable with these clans, and there's not a lot. Maybe Sap Totem.
There are some combo things that you can do that involve putting intrinsic on really, really powerful spells and having a strong start. But that seems like a really long-term thing to look for, especially when you already have the dregs that work with the candle right now.
Yeah. So it gives you a lot of tempo. Looks like we got Dusk with a clean first ring kill here.
Oh, I'm going to have to get the timer running. Where is... So I'm just going to set that.
We also have a clean kill from Heart.
There we go. Yeah, I expect a lot of flawless kills early on here, especially just given the strength of the start. Oh wow, look at that unit draft. Offering Monument Eel Gorgon. That is insane. I mean,
yeah. So what do? You can reform the Gorgon without any burnout problems.
Yeah, I guess the real trick there, like, if you're one of the players that went for the firebox, do you try to just do something insane with the Offering Monument? I think you could do that in a normal run and have it be pretty consistent and pretty strong. And it's something that you could pull off here, but we have to consider the timer. The timer's going to be ticking against these players. I don't think you have time to execute any insane combos or do anything with the firebox. Also, that's not a priority draw unit. So you couldn't guarantee have it to go with your firebox turn one, even if you didn't have any other units in the deck.
Oh, yeah. You mean like the Offering?
Yeah.
So we got Invasion here in the second one. It's going to be hard to get flawless on this.
Yeah, in fact, I think it's going to be absolutely impossible. There's just not enough ways to go wide here. It's possible that there was some setup that involved Rector Flicker on bottom softening up the first wave, or I guess you'd have to throw it against either bottom or middle wave. The problem is they didn't have enough like action cards in their opening hand to deal with the top floor if they tried to focus lower.
Right. So the Burning Candle is an out, but you have to luck out with that.
Yeah, I mean the odds weren't too bad with 5 dregs in your opening deck, but just didn't quite shake out that way. So I'm really interested in players looking at these first Hell Packs, especially the players that went for improved Firebox. I don't think either of them have encountered that draft yet. Yeah, they haven't. Or no.
The problem, I don't know what payoff spells there are with these clans for that.
So we have the finally buffed Wax and Spike, which will actually do some serious work. But that's more of a long-term thing. Like, I wouldn't want to throw that on Eel Gorgon turn 1. Even with the Purifying Cleanse, it's going to be tough to keep that thing up consistently. You could obviously reform it, but if you reform it, it's coming back with Burnout 0 because the Wax and Spike is not an enhancement on the unit, so it will not stay. So yeah, I'm not sure what you're trying to do with it. Again, you could have some insane starts with some big spells, namely things like Crypt Builder, a lot of your like common, uncommon, big chunky spells, or an intrinsic super-powered Ice Storm. I'm still not sure that you're doing much with the Firebox, but there's definitely a big mana strategy here that wants big chunky spells to go with the Firebox and wants a lot of payoff cards to play after those big chunky spells that involve, X costs. I could see there being some kind of combo deck here. It just seems a bit too ambitious for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I see Hart hasn't completed a run with Gorgon yet, or hasn't mastered the card. So perhaps exploring new strategies here.
Oh, there's the spikes.
Wax and Spike.
Just talked about it. That's going to be an interesting one. And he's on the Firebox strat.
Right, but he doesn't have the other artifact that we saw that would help, which is the X cost one.
The first help act, yeah.
He kind of needs intrinsic for that to be any sort of consistency.
That'll give you a really strong start, though, which can be very important in tournament settings. Making sure you clear those first couple waves, especially if you're going heavy, like high threat level. If you face Shard Enhanced Gilded Wing in the first wave, that can be tough to deal with if you're on a setup heavy deck. So a turn 1 Wax and Spike for 5 or 6 can be really, really big.
Oh. Looks like there's an early lead here developing with McBeard getting a flawless ring 2, which is the only one to do it.
Yeah, a lot of like tiny leaks there. And it's really just an issue of not being able to go wide enough despite the exploding candle for a couple of our players. So I guess really it ends up being Hart was the one who ran into problems with the candle. Not too surprised that the Firebox players had an early leak.
Yeah, and I think everyone took the trial.
The Mark of Invasion, yeah, that was it was a tempting one. There's also there's some give and take there. We've set it up so it's not entirely, you just have to auto take all the trials. But when you're going for high shards, which is the thing you need to be doing to set yourself up long term, I think, a lot of the trial buffs, like bonuses, are things that actually push you ahead, I think, of the curve of shard enhanced enemies early on. Like sometimes you just need that tiny bit of extra gold.
Yeah, interestingly, that market of invasion is an example of something that we were trying to avoid, which is changing behavior based on the scoring system. And that one, like, a 4 damage leak is not a big deal, but 5 points is a big deal. So it can't get away from it completely.
So McBeard is about to face a massive leak, by the way, if he can't get some kind of burnout units to start dying fast. He could not deal with multiple tank waves, and trying to save himself health, he ended up drip falling and creating a triple tank wave with are they Disciple Protectors, the 445s. He set up 3 of those with a drip fall.
I'm kind of missing that. You said McBeard. Okay.
Or sorry, it was Hart. I think Hart was the one who was having a leak.
Okay. So he did leak.
Or no, yeah, it was McBeard who had a leak. He'd already cleaned it up. He got his Rector Flicker back.
So Hart putting burnout on both of his units there and was burning out for Relentless, but pulled it off with Timely Purified Cleanse. But he did take some damage on Ring 3.
Now, Halcyon also going for a really, really high threat strat. In fact, he's on the highest threat setup here. Definitely seems to be a key split. So we have the 2 players on the top going for the Exploding Candle builds, or the 2 players at the top left and bottom right diagonal. But then we have this top to bottom split of kind of high shard strategies and low shard strategies. I tend to lean towards taking less shards early on. Obviously, there are things that consistently make it worth it. But there's a real boon to avoiding shards early and then picking them up late when your deck is kind of set up and it doesn't matter, especially when you're playing in a format where that tiny leak early on can cost you a lot of points. I'm actually very curious to see the boss relic distribution here. In the last tournament, we saw just an insane amount of card draw, an insane amount of Herzl's compounds. But I think there tends to be a high condensation of units given the enhancements now that cause people to take Light of Seraph less. But there are a lot of combos that actually really need their Light of Seraph now to actually go wide enough to have enough individual strikes to be able to clear out waves. We've kind of reached a point with Divinity where you have to count the number of strikes you have just as much as you have to worry about the damage that each of them is dealing. So you can actually deal with these waves that have, 5 or 6 units, some of which have shields. Obviously, Eel Gorgon going a long way to help that. Now, another thing to worry about is what is our patient plan long term here? You have the potential to get something like an unnamed tome later, which does have a pretty high occurrence rate in the last couple rings, but you're going to have to find something like unnamed tome, mortal entrapment, or a good chump blocking plan, I think, to deal with patient.
Yeah, I mean, you have reforms as an option. And we have, pretty difference in pace here with Dusk and Heart being basically a full ring ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the clock is going to be too big of a problem for these players, given the pace that they're going at. Finishing the first major boss fight still with 36 minutes left. It's not too bad. Looks like we're starting to run into some problems with shard enhanced enemies. McBeard is getting there against these waves, but it's not by a whole lot, and he's about to lose his Titan Sentry, which is going to cost him a lot of damage.
So McBeard is needing to restart on the ring 3.
Looks like that's Halcyon to me, but maybe not. I might have these shuffled around. So, bottom left is hard.
I'm worried about Halcyon as well.
Looks like some of the logos ended up getting shuffled around as players went in and out. So that's where we ran into a problem there. All right.
Okay, so Halcyon's able to get the kill.
Right.
I'll see if he pull it off flawless. It was a flawless victory, so that is good for him.
Sorry for that, everyone. I'm rearranging these. All right. There we go.
And
it's like we lost the screens there for a second.
We have Spike of Stygian. I missed that as the ring 3 reward for those improved Firebox players. That might be pretty solid, I think.
That's going to do a lot against your floating bosses and maybe against like a wave 1 shard enhanced enemy, something like a Pyre Wing later on. But I'm not sure that it's doing everything you need to do in these non-floating boss fights, right? Like I don't think it's helping you that much against the ring 8 fight.
Right, because mainly I don't think, and no one took first Hell Pact. It would be stronger with that.
Now it does possibly enable a very free top floor setup against Divinity, because you can at least sap Divinity into Oblivion. He'll purify other debuffs like the Frostbite, but he's not going to get rid of the sap. So that at least means you're kind of guaranteed that setup on top floor safely against Sweep, as long as you can get Intrinsic on it. But I'm not sure what it's doing in the fights between here and there. Looks like there's a Pyrestone housing available. This is really, really interesting. Halcyon picking that one up.
Dusk completes ring 4 with a flawless victory. And it looks like Heart is getting close to completing ring 4. I think McBeard is just really having a hard time getting through ring 3. It might be the end for him.
Yeah, McBeard ending up on the Wickless Tycoon. I'm not sure how I feel about that one. He's going to be fine. He'll make it out of this, but he's not well set up in terms of his priority unit draws. And I also think that's going to end up hurting him when he sees this Pyrestone housing. Now, there were a lot of tools that popped up to help deal with Seraph the Patient and also with top floor Divinity. We already discussed the Spike, but there's actually both a Frenzied Swarm and an Engulfing Smoke here. I kind of like the Engulf a lot. I can see players going for Frenzied Swarm. Yeah, I think the fact that Engulf also... So Engulf is helping you deal with all attacks, including things that end up... let's see. Like trying to figure out how to phrase this. I don't know.
The benefit of Frenzied Swarm, though, is there are the drip falls in the deck, so they kind of stack. So I'm not sure it's a clear choice what is better, but I think with Titan's Gratitude, it's a little annoying to have Frenzied Swarm in the same deck.
So I guess also previously you really couldn't set up a strategy too well that involved like multiple copies of Engulf and still having them be big. But now that we have Value Stone, you can actually go -2 Engulf and hold it over, and then start making copies of it and actually reasonably cast 2 to 3 copies of it. You can't do that with Frenzied Swarm just because of the wording on the card. So I'd be a bit worried about petering out in Relentless fights. Though maybe that's not that big of an issue if you're already putting burnout on your kill floor anyways. You only have a finite number of turns.
It's true. The other thing to consider, though, is that stealth does not work with the Eel Gorgon. So Daze does. So
That is true.
A lot of people have the Gorgon is a big, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's a big part of their strategy. And so if they're going with stealth, they better be killing in only a couple rounds.
Yeah, I've seen a couple players take Gorgon and actually use its essence. The assumption being, and from what I've heard from a lot of these players, it's a little tough to keep Gorgon around in some of the later fights or even some of the earlier fights against a lot of very spiky shard enhanced enemies. And you just don't want that additional thing to worry about. Really looks like, is it just Halcyon? No, Halcyon and Rising Dusk both sticking with the Gorgon. Now,
yeah, I mean,
good.
I believe he has a Siren Infusion on it, which seems smart, since that gives you both health and damage, which these cleanse don't really have any ways to scale those. So that's one of the few ways. The other thing would be like a Baron Infusion, but I haven't seen the Baron pop up yet. See here, we got a Burnout Champ from McBeard, level 2. I'm just watching, and we have Halcyon trying to manage a very tough Ring 4 boss.
Now, Hard here ended up on a strategy of double offering Monument and the Firebox, trying to set himself up for a really, really strong start with this Siren. But you can see that the result of that wasn't anything too crazy. He actually faced a massive leak against Wave 1, which should be the wave that he's more prepared to deal with in his strategy than other people. And that was kind of a result of just having too many units built into the deck. The fact that you start with these dregs, which just don't count as a spell, even if it was a worthless spell, you would have gotten a lot further. Just having your other starter spell be something that you can throw in to keep your cycle going. But I think he's going to get a lot of kind of false starts thanks to these dregs and train stewards.
Yeah, that's why, I mean, I'm going to double down in my opinion that Firebox is a little rough to make work. I mean, I'm sure it's doable, but it's not easy. And we have a big damage gap for Halcyon here on the Ring 4 boss. 200 damage short, which would be a kill if he does not restart.
Yeah, he's currently doing the math on Frostbite plus his Pyre, but I don't think it's going to get him there. I think he just comes up a tiny bit short. So he's going to be looking for a restart here. Oh, yeah, also that boss has multi-strike, was enhanced with multi-strike. So that thing's a bit of a problem. Lifesteal's not doing him any favors either.
Dusk getting another flawless victory in Ring 5. So doing very solid here with only one missed ring, which most people missed. So we got a restart for Halcyon. Let me just add that.
Yeah, it's going to set him back a little bit. So we have Guz in chat. By the way, Guz, scores are updated live. We just don't have them available on screen currently, but they are being tracked.
Yeah, right now Rising Dusk in the clear lead, but he's also a bit ahead of the pace.
So it looks like we have a restart from McBeard as well. McBeard having trouble against shard enhanced incant enemies.
Another restart. Oh man. So he had to restart in Ring 3 as well. So he is going to struggle to keep up. He's got to hope that the others are going to struggle in later rings, maybe.
Yeah, McBeard maybe a little too ambitious with the shards. Went for a really high threat strategy, like long term high threat strategy, but is struggling to keep up with a lot of these tankier shard enhanced enemies. He seems to be able to go wide enough thanks to the Titan Sentry, the Offering Monuments, Reforming Titan Sentry, but he just can't go tall enough in terms of damage right now. I think he ended up hitting his units in a bad order as well, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, I still I struggle to make these Offering Monuments work in a light spell deck. Hard getting a ring 5 kill, but took a lot of damage.
Yeah, and it was really just to a first wave leak. This very, very small single shard enhanced enemy. Couldn't quite get off the ground fast enough. I think his deck is pretty well set up to do that. Oh, not what you want to see when you just took a bunch of damage is the chest event. Kinda
Chest of money chest.
yeah.
I sometimes if my deck is struggling, I'll take it anyway, like it's a Hail Mary.
Yeah, I mean you have to make concessions if you feel like you're behind the curve of the game. I've put myself down to 2 or 3 health to take the big chest actually.
And then usually have to skip the trial, but that's part of the game.
So there were a lot of possible outs to patient here. We've certainly seen a lot of them. The days, the stealth, but it doesn't seem like players are actually leaning that hard into them. Obviously, we've seen a couple of these cards taken, but I don't think we've seen a single holdover or value stone yet.
Yeah, I mean, there's time.
There's a couple rings left, yeah. What you really don't want to do is be running into these final rings, banking on that, banking on encountering that. I'd also be worried about the Frenzied Swarm if that's the plan for that any player is supposed to go with, though I think it's all stealth. But if you go for Frenzied Swarm against Patient and you don't actually have enough health on your units, he will chunk through because you're not going to be able to apply enough days to actually, leave him with days as he's approaching top floor. Like that days isn't going to keep you around during Relentless Fight. It's just going to help you not get whacked by him early on.
I mean, it can if you combine with Driftfall and Holdover. Like, so I would like. I think Daze is a better long-term plan simply because of stealth not working on the Gorgon. For those that are using the Gorgon as their main unit.
Yeah, I'm surprised we're not seeing that many of them. I think players are generally shying away from Gorgon. Like, obviously, some people are playing them, but maybe for lack of experience with it. I mean, for as much as I play Monster Train, I've only encountered Gorgon once, and it wasn't even during a natural run. It was just during a challenge.
So, Hellish Sun completes Ring 4, but since it was a restart, no bonus for he took no damage after the restart, but no bonus for that because he did have to restart.
On the bright side, that health actually ends up becoming big. So McBeard completing that fight, staying alive despite the restart, but McBeard preserving that health coming into this that concealed caverns later on could be really big.
Oh right, because you have to give up health for money.
But I like the setup on the waxen spikes here. Is that a spell chained waxen spike? And he doesn't even have the first Hell Pact? That one's a little curious.
It seems a bit strange. Maybe he's banking on getting -2 cost on it.
Yeah, if you value stone it, that's decent value. You're still not getting insane returns. I guess actually the benefit, you can play that for 0 and still give the extra burnout. Because the burnout 4 is not tied to your X value. So if you really need to just extend the life of the kill floor that you set up with it, Spell Chain on Waxen Spike specifically is not bad.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about it that way. That is, if that was the goal, that makes sense. I kind of would, maybe you can even save the second copy to play on a recycle, which I think if you're going with the Gorgon has so many attacks, that might be wise.
Now, McBeard ended up with an Ice Storm, which I think is one of the big boons to Stygian since the release of Divinity, specifically given how that interacts with Divine Temple. Yeah, and he just saw a +10 piercing, but chose to throw it on a Titan's Gratitude instead. Maybe
That's
holding out for plus 30 and holdover and avoiding piercing. I'm not sure.
Dusk with another flawless victory on ring 6.
Yeah, Dusk is in a very good position now. He's got a risky draft here with this Gifts for a Guard. It's possible you want to do something with the Formless Child, but the Gifts for a Guard is a really, really tempting one that has a lot of give and take. So obviously it's going to help you get through those first couple waves, avoid leaks, but he's not having too big of an issue with that. And his deck has some very key spells. If you hit Engulf or you're molded, if you hit either of those things just one time really early on, or you draw your cards in the wrong order, or his Frenzied Swarm, you might just be in a position where you're forced to restart.
Yeah, but he has holdover Frenzied Swarm. He doesn't need to play the Gifts for a Guard if he hasn't drawn it yet. And if he has it in hand, then he doesn't have to worry about it hitting that one key spell. And that's really the only key spell I see that he has. That being said, I don't see a lot of benefit either. So that's why he looks like he skipped it.
Now, do we expect double Herzl's Compound for Major Boss Relic here? I feel like, I mean, certainly the Firebox players want it. And I guess the decks are pretty lean, so maybe you just keep going into card draw.
I don't know. Compound is draw. Okay, so light is capacity, and I just think of them as capacity draw.
Yeah.
So it looks like Dusk went for the draw. He'd already gone Ember, so he's not going for a super wide floor, but the Gorgon is kind of his main attack strategy, which makes sense that you would take draw to enhance that. Yeah, I'm just making sure I'm so Holosan. Yeah, so I'm caught up on the scoreboard.
Really interesting, the reforms on Offering Monuments, giving them that extra 5 health to get one more trigger, where usually bringing them back by any means is not actually that productive. It's still not like amazing, but at least it's a way to kind of cycle your reform cards and generate a couple more incant triggers.
Yeah.
But pretty big.
If like infusing one of those with a siren or something would have any value.
Yeah, the question of whether or not you'd be able to keep up. I'm not sure.
After a reform, yeah, I guess it wouldn't. You'd have to have double triggers.
Yeah, I mean, if you see a Founding Seal, then I wouldn't worry too much about how your Offering Monument's doing anyways. Also, the Offering Monument with a Founding Seal would actually die faster as well.
Yeah, that's true. So 100 damage short from Halicon on the Ring 5 boss. Also struggling a little bit, but he hasn't played his spells as McBeard.
Yeah, it looks like that's going to be a big restart from Halcyon.
McBeard got it, though.
Yeah, McBeard. He's pulling back into it. Interesting. He had an Offering Monument die earlier from actual combat damage. He's able to get that back and have it still preserve some health.
McBeard got flawless there, and so did Hart. Hart got a flawless victory on Ring 6.
Now, we've seen multiple copies of Subsuming Blade in this run, which I think is one of the cards that gained a lot from the release of Last Divinity. You have a lot of, random damage shields, spell shields, extra armor thrown around on units. Also important to take out specific key units when you're fighting Divinity, like the units that are protecting enhanced mini-bosses or backliners that are giving spikes. The real issue is that, one, the Subsuming Blades came around a little late here, and also these players have so many things they want to do with holdover. I mean, it's not just your defensive plan like your Frenzied Swarm or your Engulf and Smoke. It's also, Ice Storm, a lot of your pre-clear or your Molded. I think they're spread way too thin on things that really need holdover.
Yeah, that being said, even if you get it up to like 15 damage, the fact that it's piercing and you can choose the target, it's still pretty... I think it's early enough to take it. Extra burnout being offered seems good.
Yeah, so that's actually really big for Hart's strategy. He's leaned hard into this double cast on Wax and Spike, and is definitely going to be looking to get it turn 1 to get intrinsic on it. That's going to be really, really massive, getting that extra burnout stacks, because then he can kind of just leave his units there and not worry about them. That'll end up being 14 stacks of burnout on all of his units on his kill floor turn 1, and then he can kind of keep that up a little bit with the heals. That should be enough to get him through the fight. and through Relentless.
Old Magic.
Go to Old Magic. Old Magic is a weird one for tournaments because trying to make those decisions at a reasonable pace can be very difficult. The decisions that you make with this card are really a lot more important. It has this feel of something that you kind of just throw together, and no matter how you do it, you're just getting a bunch of decent effects. The problem is some effects want you to target your own things, some effects want you to target enemy things, some effects want you to target your units that you don't mind shifting around floors or shifting their space on floors, and some of them do. So when you put those things together, you can run into scenarios like we just saw with Hart, where he just couldn't even take the card. It was actually very counterproductive because the mechanics that were applied to the card wanted to do too many different things.
Yeah, like the one that gets me is you have to commit to pushing forward or backwards, and sometimes you don't know what is. It depends on what you get later in the card.
Yeah, or usually like descend is something that's really good against your floating bosses or random enemies to buy you time, plug up leaks. But if you end up taking, buff effects or rage or healing, then that's not too great. So if you see a bunch of like push, pull, and descend, you end up having to shift that into being a card that you try to play on enemies, and you might just not have set up the card to be productive to play on enemies up to that point.
Yeah, and especially for Divinity, having the ability to change enemies around is very important. So much so that I often end up giving the card buff and then using it on enemies anyway. So Helicon just got a flawless Ring 6 kill, but he had to restart there, I believe, or Ring 5 kill.
So I'm gonna go back real quick to the strategy that Hart is running with this Waxen Spike. He ended up just taking consume removal on his spike, on his spell chain spike. So now he's locked out of getting intrinsic. I think maybe he's recognized that this isn't going absolutely perfectly for him. He's taking a lot of damage. He doesn't know how the other players are doing, what rings they leaked on, or if they leaked on any rings at all. And he might feel like he's in a position where if he's not hitting that Waxen Spike turn one and having extra effects on it, then he's just in such a bad spot. That, or maybe he missed how much burnout he's getting with the combustible Waxen Spike, spell chain Waxen Spike, and maybe he thinks he's needing more burnout to win these. Either way, now he's lost the opportunity to get intrinsic, which makes his deck very, very draw dependent on turn one.
True. He did take a draw gem, and that helps.
Yeah, he's looking at about a 1 in 4.
Yeah. So Dusk, let's see how Dusk did. Dusk got a flawless Ring 7. He is primed to just take this one.
Yeah, and there's Crushing Demise, by the way. That'll help him. Yeah. That'll help enable really good flying kills on Divinity. Oh, looks like we got another restart from McBeard here.
McBeard had to restart on Ring 6, was it?
Yeah, Ring 6, Fight 6. So he's not having too much problems cleaning up waves. McBeard actually hasn't encountered as many leaks as some of the other players, but he's not had the longevity going into Divinity fights that the other players have had. His scaling just isn't that fast. Now, Dusk here looking at an Ice Storm. I think he's in such an amazing position here. Did he end up taking the Crushing Demise? I guess we'll see it pop up in the deck.
I find it hard to turn that down, but it looks like he might have skipped it.
Oh, no, there it is. Yeah, so, Crushing Demise and Ice Storm, enhance that Ice Storm, and he can probably afford to just lean hard in Emergence of Magic here, try and get one more holdover.
Yeah.
That gives you...
hits those mini bosses, it's really strong.
Yeah, especially combined with the Ice Storm, or any of these other random spells, like your Energy Siphon setting something up. If you can pre-clear the frontliner or backliner that helps out the enhanced mini boss and set up the guaranteed Crushing Demise, then you're completely set up against that. Not only to avoid it from taking a lot of damage to your pyre to these mini bosses, but also that's a big opening to smack Divinity. That's a good way to enable flying kills on Divinity. Just getting a full pre-clear.
Yeah, even getting a 2-turn boss rush counts as a flying kill. So having just the 1 turn against the boss could enable that. So victory. Oh, Dusk was still in the victory screen. I was like, oh, he finished another ring. No, he was just deciding on what cards to get.
Now, I will say maybe a path back into this for McBeard. The one thing that he's picked up that every other player who has passed him has not had the ability to get was a Wax Snuffer, which he doesn't have an amazing setup for right now, but that's one of those busted artifacts that can set up flying kills or just, guaranteed flawless fights. And there's a lot of powerful tombs that you can pick up later on. Or even rare packs.
We haven't seen them. Like, you could get Bounty Stalker, but I think Ring 6 is the last chance to get something like that. Or I think you can get a rare from Ring 7 as well, but Bounty Stalker and Ring 7 is just not worth it.
There was, for example, that copy of Formless Child, though that might be a tricky one to set up, especially when you're worrying about a time crunch. Trying to get yourself into a position to get one of your Sirens dead, or both of them dead, and Formless Child them back. I'm not sure.
Yeah. And we have the Burnout. We had so much tomb support in this run, but just no tombs. Okay, we have Helicon with again a large damage gap facing in relentless combat. Heart just got a Ring 7 kill, but it was not flawless.
So worth noting for the audience members, we had a bit of a desync there. There are exactly 3 extra minutes on that clock in the middle of your screen. So they're currently looking at 13 minutes. I don't think it's going to come up. It looks like players are going to finish, but sometimes your last Divinity or Seraphites can go a little long. We're still maybe approaching a time crunch here. I'm interested to see how these Ice Storms get enhanced. Like, a single forgotten name is not quite getting you there on Magic Power. I think Rising Dust is extremely well set up for flying kills. Just given
you think so?
He has the Crushing Demise. He has an Ice Storm which he can set up, but he's the one that's leaned really hard into the Eel Organ plan. You get one good pre-clear and a lot of incants. You can go pretty nuts, though he's the only one who's not on double card draw. So maybe taking that mana ends up meaning he can't play enough spells. Like, obviously I can see the merits of the mana. It might have been really important here. It's just going to depend on how early he gets his Eel Gorgon.
McBeard needs to restart on Ring 6. Is that his second?
That would be his third restart. Oh, for just this fight? Yeah, he's restarted twice. Having some real problems in the Relentless fight against Arcus. It's interesting looking at the power level of a lot of the cards in these decks and seeing players struggle with them. I think we ran into a lot of things where the order in which players draw their cards is really important. Also, not a lot of cards cleaned out of the decks. They're not extremely thick, looking at 3 25-card decks and a 31-card deck. But that can still be really rough when you're split on multiple priority draws. Like with this combination of Titan Sentry Siren or Titan Sentry Eelgorgon, or in the case of Rising Dust, Titan Sentry Eelgorgon Siren. That's caused some slightly awkward draw order issues.
Yeah, that's true. He did take draw. I mean, you see, everyone took at least one draw gem, and most people took 2. Rising Dusk being an exception there for Ember.
I think as far as overall strategies go and how players approach shards, McBeard was clearly the one who went really ham on shards early. He went for a very high threat level strategy, and you can see how fast he's backed off of it. Still might end up with more shards than all the other players. In fact, he's on a good pace to do that. But he slowed down his pace significantly, and that was not for a loss of there being decent upgrades in Divine Temples. He saw that he was leaking a bunch. He saw that he couldn't keep up with some of those early waves. And also, he's just got a real big reality check from a shard-enhanced enemy with an incant ability. So I can see him slowing down. I'm curious to see if some of these players who came in with kind of a presupposition of how they wanted to handle shards going into the tournament might actually change their strategy throughout the tournament. A little bit of gut reaction there.
Yeah, I mean, I think having a strategy of this is how many shards I want to take going into it, it's hard because really, like, taking shards have relative value, right? Sometimes it's worth it, sometimes it's not. I don't think it's ever like defines you should go a low shard strategy or you should go high shard. I think we talked a little bit about this last week where like there's an approach where you evaluate the shard by the upgrade you're getting rather than by your total shard level, and I think that's a good approach.
I think the other big consideration there is how do you pace your shards? Because some things which might seem to be good equity or like good return on your shard values early on might be worthless because it's early on. There tends to be this weird power curve problem where it's easier to kill those 290 health shard enhanced gilded wings later on than it is to often kill those, I don't know, like 75 health 4 power sweepers in the first couple fights.
Or ring 4 boss with multi-strike 4, right?
Yeah.
Like if you yeah, I see the point. Like early shards, you better be worth it if you're getting high threat level early on. You better have something to help you capitalize on that.
Yeah, I tend to lean towards trying to keep myself at yellow or lower for the first few rings and then going hard into it later on. And that seems to be the strategy that our top 2 players went for.
Another restart for McBeard.
Yeah, McBeard seems to be in a bit of a hole here. He has 8 minutes left as well, which that's going to end up being a problem now, though obviously getting through the ring and trying to get yourself some extra points next ring is a bigger concern.
Yeah, well, the good news for him is that he, although it's not likely he'll win, he has another shot.
Yeah. So I will go over the bracket format that we have after the conclusion of these runs. But this is double elimination, so every player will have at least one extra match to keep themselves alive going into day 2.
So Helicon has to restart on ring 7, was just like a couple hundred hit points short of killing the boss, and the boss is not something that you can let leak at all.
No, especially the shard enhanced bosses; those things will absolutely dumpster your pyre.
He is like doing 50 damage. Now, going into before casting any spells, the Dusk was he's still 1,000 hit points short. He might have to do a restart here.
Yeah, I think he's running the numbers, but there's no way he's not applying any more frostbite here.
So his first restart of the run.
This is just a very weird run where it feels like players had the cards that would generally be the tools to victory. But again, I think draw order dependency became a real issue here. And splitting your banner units end up being a real issue here. Those two things are definitely very closely related. You see a lot of players getting their Titan sentries on turns 2 or 3 when they really need them turn 1 to start softening up waves for their actual kill floor on top. Been a big issue.
You got double Siren from Heart, and that seems to be doing pretty good things.
So actually, we see Halcyon now casting the Gifts for Regard that everyone else skipped over earlier. I'm actually not feeling too bad about that Gifts in this situation. Like, again, there's an inherent risk if you feel like, it either took your draw or you put yourself into a position where you need to play it and you're risking hitting some very crucial cards. But just that little power spike, those extra incant triggers, that extra magic power in the first couple of turns can be just what you need to get through the shard enhanced enemies and get your incant set up or your reform set up. I think the gifts might have been a really big boon for him. The key issue here being that, like, there's no way of knowing that this is going to be a big kill run. I think this run ended up being a lot more brutal than it seemed.
Yeah, I think the problem with gifts is just you don't have a large number of spells, so you need to consume remove a couple of them, and then it's pretty strong. But then you have a problem where it costs a lot of ember to play it. So I think it has the potential. I just think that they didn't have time to capitalize on that potential.
So again, the timer 3 minutes off, but we're looking at sub 5 minutes now to complete these runs. And a lot of players trying to squeeze themselves out of rough seraph or ring 8 fights are taking a little bit slower trying to figure it out. I mean, it makes sense, but at this point, I think you're losing all opportunity to get to divinity and get extra points if you're being a little too patient with patient here. Yeah, you like that one?
Mick Beard finally finishes ring 6 with no points, but they get points for, if they can finish ring 7.
Yeah, I'm wondering if he's watching the time, and if he's recognized how little time he has left. Sub 4 minutes now, and seems to be not exactly rushing through these decision points between fights. I think it's very interesting this combo of Stygian and Melting Remnant. No matter what combination you go with of primary champion, secondary starter cards, any of that, these are two clans which have very, very high number of individual game actions they have to take, and that'll really slow down the pace of a run. All right, looks like we have our first divinity kill coming from Heart. Yeah, Reform and Incant.
Did you catch if he
Whoa.
was flawless?
I did not. So the timer just went off. There are 3 extra minutes that will end at 3:50. Okay, so does not look like it was flawless. So, but Heart really seeming to be the only person with the potential for divinity points here.
Finished ring 7. I mean, Rising Dusk, I feel like he was very close before his restart, so he has a chance.
Yeah, when you look at a lot of these decks that are dealing with Frostbite or Incant, or Burnout for that matter, there can be a lot of little things that can add up to massive amounts of damage. I mean, upwards of 1,000 or more damage, especially when you're looking at an Eel Gorgon. A single extra Incant trigger, if you can mess with your holdovers in a slightly different way, can completely change that math. I actually like the strat of leaving the dregs in the deck. I mean, they don't play well into your Incant strategy, but with for the players that have the Exploding Candle, those sweeps against Shade Wings has been really massive.
Yeah. Especially if you can set it up where you're not triggering Rally, so like a floor above.
Looks like this is going to come down to time being called.
What is the time left?
So 3:50, we are sub 1 minute.
Okay, well, yeah. We'll give him a tiny bit of leeway since we didn't give him the seat ahead of time, or 5 minutes ahead of time.
Yeah, that sounds fine to me. Ooh, got some risky crushing demises that seem to be necessary. Trying to kill an enhanced Darkwing. Enhanced Darkwings give armor to their entire wave. So we have some crushing demises being thrown on floors with relevant units to try and deal with that. Pretty unlikely to hit given that those waves have 5 enemies in them.
Okay, so we got a divinity kill by Dusk, or not divinity kill, but he made it to divinity.
I think they still have 5 minutes, right? 55 minute.
Oh, was it 55?
55?
I thought it was 55 on the Reddit post. It said 55.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it must have been a change that Nate made. I think. Oh, didn't he say he added 5 minutes because of divinity animations?
I think so.
Okay, that's what it is. I'm gonna go ahead and just start up a 4-minute timer, and we will just go by that. Look at that. Got a new timer and everything.
So not a flawless victory from Dusk, I don't think. We'll have to double check the runs though. McBeard finishes out on ring 7.
Yeah, that's gonna be a death for him. Realized that there wasn't much of a way out, but also probably paying attention to time. Knew that there wasn't much point in trying to go through the fight again. I was going to say interesting how his in-game time came out to 33 minutes, but there were a lot of restarts. So that time crunch starts becoming a big issue when you talk about incants, sequencing matter, especially as it relates to just making sure you reform units, apply burnout to them, frenzied swarm last, but then also deciding which units to reform. I really like a lot of these Titan Sentry lower floor setups, just a way to soften up waves. But that's adding another layer of complexity, which might just play against the clock too poorly.
Yeah, it looks like the 3 people that are still in it all went for like 100 shards. Helicon pretty far off from relentless combat.
Yeah, I'm gonna say a tiny bit. Yeah, I don't think he can pull it off.
The thing is, the problem is he doesn't have that second round of stealth. I mean, with that he would have easily had it, but the stealth is going away.
Yeah, no holdover on his engulf either.
Art finishes with a death. It looks like.
It's like we also have a massive leak for Rising Dusk and the death of his kill floor. Oh no, he still got it. He just leaked.
Helicon dies, so Dusk is the only one left in it.
I mean, he's got one pre-cleared wave here, and the ability to Frenzy Swarm. He's got a real issue with just needing a certain number of incants per turn, and even just like the individual card draw losses of these dead weights is really massive. Add that on top of the fact that he didn't end up on a second Herzl's compound, leaving him with only 6 draw a turn. I think he's just not having enough incants to get this Eel Gorgon big enough and with enough individual strikes to burn through the waves. Yeah, it looks like another big leak there.
The good news for him is he's already in first place score-wise. It doesn't matter if he completes this. So it looks like it's going to be Heart in Rising Dusk moving on, with McBeard and Helicon in the lower bracket.
All right, I will let him round this out real quick. It looks like we'll just have to go to explaining the brackets next round, if at all possible. So we're going to have to be making a pretty fast transition here.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and update the seeds here.
Yeah, we also want to prepare to tell Rising Dusk that he's about to get timed out. So I don't think he's getting through this fight fast enough. I mean, he's set up for Relentless, assuming he could plug the leaks, but I think he's actually just going to die to a leak anyways.
All right, let's just call it. We need to move into the new rooms. So.
Yep, that is time. All right, that will be time in the round, folks. So I'm going to go ahead and send us over. But yeah, it looks like we have Rising Dusk and Heart advancing to a 1-0 record, which will leave McBeard and Halcyon in the elimination bracket.